What's up, everyone? You're listening to Navigating the Ivory Tower, a WPTS radio podcast. This podcast talks about what it's like for Black students to attend a predominantly white institution here at this PWI. I'm your host, Jade Davis, and here I have Matt and Dion. Today, we're going to be talking about sex education and what that's like at a predominantly white institution. And I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves. Matt, if you want to go first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Zazi. I'm senior at the University of Pittsburgh, computer science major, fall 23 of the Omicron chapter of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Trey Tail.
My name is Dion Burrow, sophomore, Duquesne University, psychology and sociology major, fall 24 initiative, Omicron chapter of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, ACE.
Okay, thank you guys. So my first question for you is just about your general sex education that you received. Was this something that it was really talked about like within your family, school, or a little bit of both? I know for me personally, it was something that I feel like specifically my mom was really open to talking about, at least like when I was starting to get into middle school, just to like, tell me, especially, as I started to like go through like, getting my period and stuff like that. She wanted to make sure I was educated, but it is something that with my dad, who is Black, it was really difficult for him to like even talk about, even with my brother. Like I know he really struggled with even just like, having those conversations, but my mom told him about, how important that is just for educational purposes and just safety in general. So I'm just interested to hear about your perspectives and how it was for you.
No, yeah, I'm Kenyan, so I don't know if like if you have African parents, like they really like there's nothing other to talk about other than don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my philosophy. Like whenever, especially in middle school and high school, like whenever I told them that I'd be going out with my friends or like hanging out, like you'd always be like, okay, just don't get anyone pregnant. I'm like, what? Like, I'm watching the movies. Like, what are you talking
Right.
about? But like, yeah, that was definitely their philosophy. And I'm a triplet. We have an older brother, so growing up in like that environment, I feel like we didn't really talk about sex too much, but like I feel like we all had to kind of learn about it on our own. Like it wasn't really something that like, like. I guess my mom's like she's in the healthcare field, so one day she did like sit us down. It was like, okay, like this is how this happens, this and that. But other than that, like it was nothing crazy.
Okay.
It was learn about it and then don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you learned more about that whenever you were around your friends, or do you think like when your mom talked about it, it was helpful?
No, I feel like when my mom talked about it, it was like from a medical perspective. Like,
Okay.
Talking about eggs and ovaries. And
Oh, okay.
and all that. But
Yeah.
I feel like the basics, like like the actual like, human stuff, I definitely learned that from like friends and like online media, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, I never really had like the birds and the bees talk.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
It was very like taboo to talk about it around my family. Like Matt said, like it was like also like if I say I'm going out there, like, oh, don't get anyone pregnant.
Yeah, I hear that a
Like
lot.
it was stuff like that, but I never really talked about it. But like my father had kids young. Like my dad had my sister at 18.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
like, and I'm the youngest out of 4. So my dad was like, yo, you just gotta beat teen pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
But we never really talked about it until I was in like high school, and then he was like, yeah, like just don't do this. Look out for like STDs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you feel like in a similar situation that you learned more from your friends, or do you think it was more of like a thing you had to just kind of learn on your own, like how to protect yourself and that type of thing?
It was more of how to learn on my own. Like my friends, we never really talked about none of that stuff. It was just like when I started being active, like my dad was like, like protect yourself, wear a condom, if you pee after and it burns, look, go to the doctor. Like,
Right. I feel like that's something that's not talked about. At least, okay, I would say like this is something I found interesting, especially with my Black female friends. I feel like, it's more, I guess, talked about even within ourselves. Like just, I feel like there's so many health things that we talk about, like, going to the gynecologist and just making sure like, you're being checked, even just for things that are very common, like yeast infection, stuff like that. But I feel like with some of my guy friends, I feel like some of them, like they just like don't know any of that. And they're just kind of like, oh, I'm feeling like, like not normal, but they're just like, oh, like, who cares? But it's like, you need to go to the doctor and get some antibiotics or, get checked out for that. But I feel like it's just not really talked about and everything, which is interesting because I feel like with like, at least with a lot of like my girlfriends, like I feel like we're able to like openly talk about that stuff. Do you guys think it's just like shame, or like do you think it's just any sort of like, I don't know, like toxic masculinity or anything like that?
Like with STD specifically or just sex?
Either both, yeah. Either or.
I feel like it's like,
Wait, you go?
I feel like it's a little bit more like, I don't want to say shame, but like not knowing.
Okay.
They like younger males, you just don't want to talk about it. And like if you're like getting like this like symptoms of being sick, most of them aren't gonna think of like have like because of sex.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, in high school, I don't know. I feel like I didn't really have to deal with STDs until like college. That's when it was
Mm-hmm.
like it became a lot more. Not that I had them or anything, but like people around
Yeah.
me having them, and
Right.
like it becoming like a more like the probability of having them going up because everyone was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was taboo, like because you don't really want to turn to your friend and be like, yo, I got burned.
Right.
Like, yo, this girl burnt me. Like, that's a
Mm-hmm.
little weird. But I feel like
Right.
growing up, like now that I'm a senior, like it's definitely more like you talk about, like, you just want everyone to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
You want your friend to be safe. And, like, you just want, like, it's not as
definitely.
taboo.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like just within the Black community, I feel like there's just a lot of shame, like if that does happen or any situation like that. I feel like I noticed that even with some girls, I'm just like I feel like if my friends told me that, I would like be fine. I'd be like, are you okay? Like, I could help you, like, where you need to go, especially since like, we have like a health center on campus, like you could go and get tested for any of those things. But I think there's also a lack of education of like what is either curable or like what is treatable versus like what is something you'll have for the rest of your life. I feel like that's not a conversation that people have within Black homes, which is really unfortunate because it's like if you have something and it's permanent, like there's not a lot you can do. So do you think in general that you had enough sufficient education going into college about sex ed, or do you think it was more of kind of like, oh, like I'm just gonna have to like figure it out as I go, or from your like how we talked about like from your friends and everything?
I feel like in my school, I had like 3 different health classes.
Mhm.
Like I had one in middle school, 2 in high school. So like I knew how to protect myself going into college. So I feel like I was prepared.
I feel like, yeah, I agree. I had a lot of health classes too. Like I remember our first health class was in middle school. Like they handed out the packet and everything. It was over from there. I would say I was pretty prepared. I would say, yeah.
Did they teach more of like abstinence, or did they teach more of like, okay, like here's how you protect yourself and everything?
Yeah, mine was definitely like protect yourself. And I feel like me personally, that's a better way to teach it. Like
I agree.
I feel
Yeah.
Like, like you just assume people are gonna do it.
Yeah.
And just at least go do it safely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mine was definitely more of protecting yourself too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Like
like
the whole abstinence route doesn't really work too.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's interesting because at my school, it's actually more of like the abstinence route. Like they showed us all these like terrible pictures of like all these diseases, but then they were like, okay, in order to avoid this, like just don't have sex. But I felt like that was just like, most people aren't gonna do that, so I don't think that's helpful. But luckily, like with my parents, like they told me about how to protect myself because I think my parents were just so worried, like don't get pregnant or get something that like you can't get rid of and everything. But I feel like there was just so much like fear mongering with it, where I was just like, it shouldn't be a scary thing. It should be able to be like normalized and talked about. It's
they
really
definitely do
unfortunate.
try to scare you in high school. Like they show you all the pictures. Like,
Yeah.
They show you,
like the worst cases ever, and you're just like,
Literally
what
so
is that?
extreme, like,
and
Yes.
telling a high schooler like, yeah, you're gonna have this for the rest of your life. That's gonna scare you.
Right, because then
Like,
they think like, oh, every time they're like they have sex or something that like they're gonna get that or something, and it's just like, especially if you're in, because I think mine was in middle school, so it's like we're still all kind of young, like still learning about that stuff, so we're kind of, I think
oh
some
my
people
God,
were confused, like,
ew.
ew, like, oh my gosh, like anytime I do that,
It's
like I'm
gonna
gonna
look
get
like
that, it's
that?
gonna look like I'm never doing that, like, ew, cooties, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like it just more scared us, and in a sense, I feel like it just didn't really fully prepare us and everything, and I also feel like since I was reading about this that it wasn't really geared towards like specific demographics either, like we were talking about, because I think specifically within Black communities it's not really talked about or normalized and everything. So I feel like that type of stuff could be really helpful, because I feel like within other homes sometimes it's either talked about or it's just kind of like a known thing, like, okay, use protection because these things can happen, but it's unfortunate. But I did want to move on to the event that you guys had with Wrap Your Tool. So I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about that and why you decided to have that event.
For those who don't know, Rapper Tool was an event we had for our Alpha Week, where we basically just talked about like safe sex, how to have it, like where to get the tools for it, resources on campus, things of that nature. I think the reason we decided to have it was just because like it's a very important topic. Like you said, it is kind of taboo to talk about in open spaces, and we wanted to, we want to move towards the path of like normalizing safer sex. So having that event, and like we brought out free condoms, and like we had the educational Kahoot game. Right?
Yes.
So, which I won, by the way. But, yeah, it was just just for education's purpose. Like we want everyone to be safe, everyone to be happy, healthy.
Oh yeah.
And have fun while doing this.
And like it goes with one of our national programs, Project Alpha. So it's very important, especially in like this environment, stay protected. Know how to protect yourself, know the warning signs,
Mhm.
and just be proactive about it.
Yeah, I really actually liked the event, and I feel like it was super cool, especially just like I like that you specifically brought up like consent and issues with that because I feel like that's like a really just like an issue even that I see within like a lot of like the black population here is like I feel like there isn't a lot of sit down conversations of like I feel like people know like okay consent is like saying yes and stuff but I feel like it's so much more than that and I feel like sometimes let's say maybe somebody two people are in a room together like a bedroom or something and maybe they're just hanging out and maybe like especially I've heard a lot of like girls talk about like oh they didn't think like oh it was going to turn into anything like sexual and stuff but sometimes they feel like pressure because like oh the guy may want to
100%.
do that and everything so I'm really glad you guys talked about that because I feel like it's just something that isn't really normalized and stuff like one thing I'll also say too like I wish more guys showed up because I feel like a lot of the guys like they just are very uneducated like I was just like
very ignorant about it.
Yeah.
Some guys are kind of just like, I already know.
Yeah. Like mind you it's like sometimes like they don't do that stuff or they don't protect themselves and it's like really it's like this cycle I feel like that like people in our community just like can't get out of and it's really unfortunate because it's like that's how pregnancy happens or STIs and STDs as well. So as for sex ed in general, it's definitely taught differently, like specifically with like white homes and versus like black homes and black youth. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Even just stuff you've seen, like even if it's not like within like your own household, but even just like sociologically, some of the differences of what you have seen or observed.
Yeah. From what I've seen, like definitely coming to college, like I feel like more of like the white counterparts are more like a little bit more proactive than like black people. Like I walk into like one of the white kids on my floor, just a box of condoms everywhere. Like, but it's like I talked to one of my black friends. He's like, only got 3 condoms for a month. Like,
Oh my god!
so it's like you gotta be more like.
Wow.
So I feel like there's more of like, I guess. Yeah, there's more knowledge probably for like the white counterparts. Yeah, but I feel like that's more of, like just talking about it. Like, we don't, like we said before, we don't talk to our parents about it. Yeah, we don't talk to our friends about it.
Yeah, I know some kids who like parents gifted them condoms.
Yeah, I see that a lot.
Never happened
Yeah,
to me.
or they'll take their daughters to get
Never.
birth control, all that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane. That's insane. I would, yeah, in my family, like I know a lot of
I wouldn't even
African
talk to my
families-
mom about buying condoms.
I would never.
My mom would slap me.
Yeah,
Like, it'd be over.
Literally. That would never happen.
Yeah, I definitely do see the difference because I have like walked into rooms where there were just like condoms out and or even some of
Like,
my
keep it
white
in your
friends like
wallet.
the birth controls right there. They're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like my mom came with me to pick it up, and I feel like my mom was always like. I feel like her reason for like telling me not to get on birth control or anything like that like didn't have to do with anything sexual. It was just more of like some of the health effects, and I feel like that's
Oh,
a big
yeah,
thing too. Like there's so many
definitely.
side effects. You read that box, it's just
That's insane.
it's
It's
really
huge,
bad. And you
right?
think like it's been around for a long time and they haven't innovated it. The only thing they've innovated is like the way you can use like the IUD or like things like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, like the actual symptoms that people have, it hasn't really changed. So it's like I feel like that's why I've been kind of like hesitant to do that and everything. But I know like if I wanted to, she'd be like, okay, like you can start on that if you want to. But and I know it depends on people's doctors because at least my gynecologist, every time I see her, she's always like, oh, do you want to start on birth control? Like no matter like if I say no every single time, like she just always is going to ask that, which I think is great because it's like, if you don't have a parent that's going to like directly say, hey, this might be a good option for you, whether it's for something like period cramps or actual like sex or anything. I think that's great that they offer that as well. And so specifically, I wanted to talk about this specifically. We mentioned this a little bit on my last podcast episode, but with hookup culture in general, I feel like it's very normalized, of course, like, on college campuses and everything. But specifically, I see it a lot more with Black students. Why do you guys think this is?
I feel like in our generation, love is more like watered down.
I
Like-
agree, yeah.
Like talking to another male about another female, like the first thing I say is like, oh, like I'm trying to top that, or like I'm trying to get that, and it's like it's so
No,
like,
have you noticed like how violently like black people talk about sex?
Yes,
Like,
even
I
like if you think
killed
about like
that, I
in
poked that,
songs,
I
they're just
stabbed
like,
that.
yeah, like I tapped that, all that,
I
and you're
touched
like,
that, like,
what?
what?
Like good
I'm just
morning,
like,
or even on
exactly. Like,
TikTok,
this is
you
my
open
first
up
time seeing you
videos, you're
today.
just like, what am I listening
Crazy.
to?
I
Like,
think-
good
I
morning.
think black people definitely have been odd association with sex.
Yes.
I think
Because it's like 1 minute it's taboo, the next minute we're like getting all graphic into details of it. It's like, where is the middle ground? It's like, I'm okay with like, okay, like, talking about it, that's fine. But it's like, sometimes I'm like, where's the middle ground, guys? Like, I feel like, especially like, I don't know, like, what's wrong with being in a relationship? And like, I feel like that is just not really a thing anymore, especially with black couples.
It's not at the forefront of our mind anymore.
Yeah, I feel like the first thing is, how can I have sex with this person as quickly as possible?
And it's like, you bring up a relationship, the dude's gonna be like, why?
Right. Like, why would I do that?
Right.
It's like, how do you think, especially like, if your parents are married, like, how do you think they became married? Like, they dated and like, were in a committed relationship where they weren't seeing other partners. But I feel like, I don't know, like, at least, like, that's why I want to hear like the black male perspective of it. Cause at least like I've talked to my female black friends and they're not happy about what the situation. They're kind of just like, I feel like I should be able to either invite someone to my room or be able to hang out with a guy without him having the intention that like, we're going to have sex either, even like quickly too. Like,
Do your friends blame like your black friends, black women friends, do they blame like black men for that or?
So I feel like, okay, the friends at least that like, and I know like it's a case by case situation, but the friends that I'm with, they're very much like they would prefer like a relationship over like any type of just like hookup or random sexual encounter and stuff. But a lot of times I think they blame the culture, and also I think they do blame some of the way that black men are taught by their fathers and everything, because I feel like some conversations can be like with black fathers that, oh, it's better to just have that sexual experience rather than like, oh, that's a person with emotions and they may be looking for something more, and actually you can gain something from that, like having a committed partner and having all aspects of that. So I think they blame a little bit of both, because they also see, this is something we also mentioned on my podcast, and some of the guys actually agreed to it, is that there's this almost sense of like manipulation in the process where it's like they may like, I don't know, take you on a few dates or something like that, and then like after maybe like a week or two, then they're kind of like, that's what the guy said. They just said like they may not be going in with that intention, but it comes off as that because maybe we'll go on a few dates, everything's good, and then maybe like after a week or so they're kind of just like, you're really not trying to do anything, and it's like, can I just get to know you? Like, why does it have to be like in a rush? Because at least like from my female like black perspective, like I feel like don't you want the experience to be good? Like I don't know why they want it to be like 3, 2, 1, go. I barely know your last name. Like that was like a drive by. Like
what's
what?
my middle name? Like,
right. It
I
just
go to high
feels
school?
a little bit like you're doing too much. Like relax.
I feel like as long as you don't sell a dream.
Yeah.
Like, you don't promise this person, okay,
just
we
be
have
honest.
sex, then we can get in a relationship. Like if we're just honest, like I just want to have some fun.
I feel like
that's better.
the meaning of sex now in the black community is so watered down. It means nothing.
Literally,
it's
just
nothing.
like, oh, I had sex with this person. Okay,
like,
whatever.
It's
Like, wait, what?
And some dudes, like you said, have an agenda, and like some guys will like go to the lengths of the world just to have sex.
Oh yeah.
I feel bad for them.
And my thing we talked about on my dating episode was my friend and I, we were just saying we would rather the guy be honest about it and say, hey, up front, like, this is what I'm looking for. And like, not in like a creepy way, but just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Because then I can decide, okay, if I want to do that. Because I don't want to feel like coerced or like pressured, kind of like, oh, you're in my room, or like, oh, like, in this weird situation, like, or it's like then if I say no, or if I'm kind of like, I don't want to do that, then they're kind of just like, oh, whatever. And they never talk to you again, or they just act weird towards you, which I don't think that's right. Because it's like, you can't go in with assumptions without communication. I feel like communication within the black community is just like very flawed, and I feel like we just don't know how to talk to each other and communicate, and I feel like also there's just so much like pride and everything, and it just affects
I feel like it's hard for black people to say no.
Yes,
too.
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
To sex?
No, just in general.
In general,
I
say no,
feel like
yeah.
it's hard for us to say no. Hard for us to like be assertive.
Yeah, I love saying no. Personally.
Really, I have a hard time saying no. I feel like I have to work on that with my therapist. Actually,
yeah. If I could get
yeah.
on my forehead, I would.
No, I have an issue. Like I don't feel like I don't like disappointing people. So you ask me a question, I'm not gonna say no.
Yeah, that's how I am too. Like I have a really hard time disappointing people. I actually started talking to my therapist about this. I recently just got a black female therapist, which has been really helpful for me. And I started talking to her about some of the stuff. I was like, there have been some situations where I just felt like, like not just like not in a sexual way, but just in general, like where I felt like I couldn't say no, or I felt like, just felt weird if I did and stuff. So I feel like that's something that black women even struggle with if they maybe don't feel fully comfortable. And I also feel like sometimes like they have a way of just being like, oh, I've taken you on dates, or I, bought you all this stuff, or like, or like, oh, I really like love you and like care about you. Like they put on this whole like facade that like isn't real. Then the next day, like you don't hear from them, and you're just like, oh, like what was that? And I feel like a lot of black women are kind of used to that, which is really sad because a lot of my friends, like I feel like, their self-esteems get really lower and lower because they're not used to having good dating experiences. Because a lot of my like white counterparts or white friends and stuff, like they'll talk about like, oh, this guy took me on a date and like we dated for like, months or to a year before any of that stuff happened. I was like, wow, like I wish that could happen, but I don't know. Like I feel like, it's not really that expectation for a lot of black men. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but
I feel like I don't know. One of my friends like posed this question, and I think I've been thinking about it ever since. Like, do you think it's harder like, to find like a good man or a good woman, like in the black community?
I feel like it's harder to find a good man, and not even just out of like bias, but I think there's just like statistical proof. Like even some of my questions, like I was like doing research just to make sure, like, that this is like proven, because there have been a lot of studies based on this, but I feel like it's just like lack of like male role models. Because I feel like a lot of like black men, like whether it's like maybe their fathers have left or maybe their fathers like they might be physically be there, but not like emotionally. So it's like when having conversations about like healthy sexual relationships, they're not gonna have that. They may say like make comments like, oh, like that are misogynistic or that may just over sexualize black women and everything, and the mistreatment of them. So I feel like that can be the problem. But of course, there is case by case basis. Black women, of course, like we have faults within ourselves, but I do feel like it is a little, I also think it's a little bit more normalized where it's like the men can do it and kind of get away with it. But if a woman's acting in that way, I feel like people say like, oh, she's a hoe or like, whatever. And like, I don't like mess with people like that type of thing.
I think we need to normalize like calling men hoes as well.
Yes, I
100%,
agree.
100%.
Yes. I feel like it's not normalized. Even like within like friend groups. I don't know if you noticed that. Just I feel like a lot of guy friends and stuff, I feel like they can't call their guy friends out for like the stuff they do and how they treat women. And it's really sad because it's like.
What do you think though? It's harder to find a good man or a good woman?
I feel like it's equally as hard.
Okay.
Because I think,
why do you think about black women? Like I want to hear that perspective. Like why is it hard to find a black woman?
I mean, me personally, I haven't had the craziest experiences with black women. I feel like I'm very selective.
Okay.
Like who I talk to. Like
that makes sense.
But it's from what I've seen. Other people
who are these crazy women they're talking to? Because it's like I've had this conversation with you, like who are these women?
Like you can find the evilest of women and just a normal girl on the street. Like she would do you so crazy, like curse your whole family bloodline. She look like a regular woman on the street.
Do it voodoo, put a rock.
Literally, like
what?
Regular woman. No, I've seen it with my own two eyes.
Exactly.
So I think
gosh.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it's, but like I said, I've seen that on the men's side too. I've seen men do some women so incredibly.
I just like the lying needs to stop. I feel like black men have a hard time like not lying. Like why can't you just tell the truth? Like I'd rather be honest with somebody. Like
I feel like
what do we lie? I want to know like an example. Like I just like I'm curious. I feel like I hear that a lot from like some of my guy friends, but they never like tell me what it is. So it's like I want to know if it's like something I do. At least I think I'm a very honest person. I'm very straightforward with people. Like if I'm upset or angry or whatever, like I'm able to like fully say that and be like, okay, this is how it is. But
I feel like it comes from like a family aspect though. Like
okay.
Some people don't want to like they'll lie about what they're feeling just because they don't want you to like know or don't want you to like know that they're feeling a type of way.
Is that kind of like the thing where it's like, oh, I'm fine, sort of,
yeah,
or it's like, oh, everything's like all good, and then it's really not.
Yeah, and then you stop texting me for like 3 weeks. And I was like, damn, like, what happened?
I don't think I've ever ghosted somebody. Like, I feel like I'm always upfront. Like, even actually today,
I do that all the time.
Ew, I'm sorry, I hate that.
I do it.
I literally just saw a girl on campus I ghosted.
I'm a big fan of being like, hey, this isn't gonna work out.
Right? Yeah, that's literally what I do.
I don't know, but I'm not gonna.
I'm not doing that confrontation. Yeah. I don't like conflict. I'm gonna ghost you.
No, that's my thing. Is like I feel like listen. I just feel like black men don't know how to deal with conflict. I feel like they're not shown how to dealing with it though. Like like how to resolve, how to healthily resolve it. I feel like that's the biggest thing because I feel like there's a difference between like arguing because I feel like that's the biggest thing with a lot of like either black relationships or even like if you're in a sexual relationship with someone, maybe like the black girl in the situation brings up, hey, I'm not happy with this, whatever, and then they get either really defensive or they make excuses or they want to argue. And I feel like if you bring up a point, you don't have to argue.
Once you start yelling, I'm not listening.
Yeah, there's a certain way you have to bring things up. Like if
a
lot of the times like when that happens, you said like it's brought up in a very negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you ever heard I just think it's funny how.
Oh,
exactly.
not the.
Like,
I don't think I've
I'm
actually
like,
ever said that before because I see people like my friends like they'll send me screenshots where I'm like, you can't start off with that. Like sometimes like I try to start off with like I noticed that, so it's kind of like I'm like paying attention but not super like argumentative or even placing blame. Just kind of like I've noticed this or it seems like or this is how it made me feel. So it's not completely even if you feel like it's all their fault, you can kind of just bring it up in that way so it's not like they're defensive. But even still, like I feel like guys I've talked to have been like really defensive. Even when I did that, I was like, I'm just trying to bring this up in a nice way. I could have started to yell or do all this crazy stuff, but I didn't. I feel like the communication is just always
I
off.
feel like
we
a good
don't
way.
like hearing our flows.
Yeah,
But that's how you
no one
improve.
does.
That's
No
how
one
you
does.
learn. That's how you
I feel like a
grow.
good way
Yeah,
that I
but
read
still.
recently, like not recently, like in the summer, it was like say I feel like
Yeah, I feel
da-da-da-da,
like, yeah,
instead of like
that's a
you
good
did
idea.
this or you did that.
Right, saying
So-
you. That's what I feel like they talk about a lot in therapy is like,
Yeah.
placing the you
Yeah.
is always going to start an argument,
Oh,
like
yeah,
no matter what. Because a
100%.
person might be caught off guard, even if they don't intentionally realize. Because I feel like
It's just human
there's a
nature. Like
difference.
if you hear you get on
You're
the
just like, I
defensive.
didn't do that, or like, that's not what it
Exactly. You
was.
could've done it,
But
it's like the way they said it. Like, I gotta defend myself.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's also what is shown in the home because I think also like I'm from like an interracial like family and stuff, and I think my parents did a really great job of always like talking out arguments or like disagreements. So I feel like I learned that from them of just being like, okay, like in order to resolve a conflict like within relationships, I need to talk about it and stuff. So I've always been that person. So I always struggle when people just don't want to talk about it or don't like want to have that conversation. I feel like that's just something that Black men and Black women need to get better at because there's going to be no relationship. You guys can't resolve any conflict, even small stuff. But another question I had, this is interesting. Like when we think about like Black stereotypes, I feel like a big one, especially for Black men and Black women, is hypersexualization. Like whether it's like for men being like sexually aggressive or for women just being like sexual objects specifically. Do you think that like those narratives also just like affect the way that like we are seen, just even just like going to like a PWI and everything and just thinking about like, sexual relationships and stuff?
Yeah,
It's
so-
definitely like people always talk about like if you're a Black person talking to a white person, they always your friends always gonna say, "Are you feel like you're being fetishized?" And it's like it's always those jokes, and it's
Yeah,
like
I
we are
100%
hypersexual.
agree. I think Black men are definitely fetishized. I think every race fetishizes the Black race.
Oh no, I
Honestly, I
agree.
really think so. Like, and I feel like with Black women, they are looked at as like sexual objects, and some Black women, play into that to make more money, and Black men on the same side, right? But I feel like even when I came into
If you got
college,
it,
like,
you got it.
Right. Oh my
I came into college like my man's like he wanted to go play in the snow. I was like no, bro. Like they don't even see you as a human. They see you as like a porn category. Like you know what I'm saying? Like I totally get
Yeah,
off that
there's a difference
immediately.
between someone that authentically is like, oh, I just like
And
you,
just
like
wants to
we have a
fulfill a
connection, like
fantasy,
yeah.
like-
But then there's a difference between like snow bunny heaven and all that
Exactly.
stuff. Like
No, I had to tell him like get off that. Like they don't even see you as a person. Like
right.
Thank God
And you could
saved him from
tell.
the snowstorm.
You could tell. You could tell like how
There's a
deep
difference.
conversations go. Like if it's real superficial, you're like, yeah, you're trying to fetishize me. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah. Wait. So as a Black woman, do you feel like you're fetishized frequently?
Yeah, 100%. I actually just like had an experience with that. Like I like before I got here, it was so creepy. I got like 2 DMs and it was like at the same time, and it was like 2 guys like on the football team and everything, and like they were just like texting me just very like explicitly like graphic sexual stuff, and it's like, hello, good morning, I don't even know who you are.
Just
And it
DM
was
me,
just,
bro,
and all I said was like, I have a boyfriend, which is like true, but it was just, and they were just like, oh, but I could still be your friend after you said all that. Like what is like? It's just so like I love Black men, but it's like what are we doing?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was
yeah,
just so like that's crazy, and it's like this is why we have these like terrible stereotypes. Like don't just say that. Even if you think someone's attractive, like you can say like, oh, like I think you're so
Whatever
pretty, like
happened to hello?
whatever, like
How
hello,
are you?
good
Exactly.
morning,
My
like how are you
name
doing?
is.
My name
Good
is like what's your
morning.
name? Like I was just like, this is such a stereotype, especially coming from like Black athletes and stuff. I was just like,
God, I hate
they already
that.
have enough stereotypes to
they
deal
always-
with and grapple with. Like why are we adding it to this? And I just feel like sometimes I have a hard time telling if someone is actually legitimately interested in me or if they just like have more of like sexual intentions. So I feel like sometimes it gets blurred, or even times I've like called people out and like, I feel like you're gearing towards like that area and stuff. And they're always like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. But then it's like when my friends will ask them like, what do you like about her? They're just like, or they just say something about like my physical features. And it's just like,
No, but yeah, like
No.
Dion said, like just have like more conversation with them. You can tell by the depth of the conversation.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Who they are, what their intentions are.
Like what you said about like athletes, like I'm on the track team at Duquesne, and when I tell a girl I'm on the track team at Duquesne,
Oh,
they
no.
automatically think I'm some type of whore.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Automatically think
Okay.
that I'm just like just trying.
Yeah,
to
you're
get-
probably talking to
I'm
like
trying
10
talk-
girls.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
it's
what
just a
sucks.
stereotype that like needs to be broke.
I feel
This
like,
is
especially with
not-
certain types of sports, like I feel like one time I did talk to like a track athlete or something, but I felt more comfortable because he didn't have like that stereotype of like being a football player, being a basketball player, where it's kind of
Yeah.
like, you're DMing like all these girls or whatever, and it was fine. But yeah, I feel bad because it's like, I'm sure there are like really good athletes out there that like, maybe want to commit a relationship or maybe don't want anything that like has to do with those stereotypes. But I feel like, as Black athletes, it's just, that's what comes up and everything. I don't know if that happens like with like black female athletes. I don't know if you like have any like black female friends that are athletes and they've experienced that and everything. Because I feel like I've like heard a lot about that. I feel like it's more of like black men that talk about that.
Yeah, it's mostly black men. Black women don't really get this same like.
I
I've
feel like
seen it. I'm not
stereotype.
saying like I've seen it for
Yeah.
sure. But
But it's definitely not as common though.
Because I feel like the common stereotype with like athletes that are like women, it's just usually like they're so busy to even if they're not in a relationship, they're so busy to like even be in one or they're
And
doing
guys
all this
don't
stuff.
like busy girls for some reason.
Okay, that's another thing that like I just like that really irritates me, and I feel like I notice it a lot with like black men and stuff because I feel like with like anyone else I've talked to, they haven't really had a problem with this. It's like I'm a very busy person, like I have a lot going on, like most of the time because it's like I like staying busy and productive, but I'm willing to like make time for like if it's like a person I'm seeing or whatever. But I feel like a lot of times like they'll be like, oh, I understand, but then they'll like be petty later and like leave me undelivered for a really long time, like, oh, sorry, I was busy too, which I know they weren't. So it's just like, are you serious? It's like I wouldn't purposely ignore you. Really?
I didn't know that people.
The most
I would
annoying thing.
Okay, I would prefer you're busy. Like that means you have things.
You
to
have
do.
a
That
life.
means
I'm like,
basically
why
you
don't
have a
you
life.
like that? Like they get mad. Like
No.
Yeah.
I think on the other end
arguments.
too. I'm sure Dion, you've experienced like girls would be like, oh, why you didn't text me back? Why you didn't?
Oh no, I know
Why
what you mean. I have friends like that that are kind
and
of.
I always tell them, I'm like, yo, if I was a bum and I was texting you 24/7,
Exactly.
You would hate that.
You
You'd be
would
mad.
literally ignore me, like.
Exactly.
So like, be careful what you wish for.
Right.
It's equal opposites. Like,
Mhm.
You
and
wouldn't
it's
really
like
want
when you're busy, you're talking to someone that's also busy. When you guys see each other,
that. It makes
it's
so
better.
Much,
It's
No,
lot
that's how I
better.
feel. Like
It's a
I
lot
get
better.
more excited to like see
Exactly.
that person and everything. Like I feel like the person who I'm dating now, like he is very understanding and he's also a busy person. So it's like nice. So when we see each other, like it actually like
it's
feels like we're
better,
connecting
sure.
and stuff. But yeah, like I feel like the last person who I dated, like he would get so mad at me or he'd like post on his story like petty stuff. And I was like, the sassy black men epidemic needs to stop.
You were
Like I'm
dating a
sorry.
woman.
No,
You were
exactly.
dating a woman.
Literally, I'm like, do
No.
you want a boyfriend? Like I don't. Like it's so
It's,
ridiculous.
it's good being sassy though. Right?
No,
You know?
I'm sorry, but I hate
But
that.
I think we also need to realize women tend to only call black men sassy when they lose an argument. That's the
No,
only time I really.
If I'm
ever-
beating you up in an
that's
argument,
just not
the
true.
It's not me
only
being
time I really
sassy.
hear
It's
it.
just you get ate
No,
up.
I just like get mad
Exactly.
when it's
You
like,
get ate up in
why,
an argument.
why
Now
are
all
you
of a sudden I'm
posting
sassy.
about
Exactly,
me?
right?
Now all of a sudden I'm sassy.
Like
No,
that's my thing. Like, why are you posting about me? Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
sassy
sassy.
behavior.
That's
Posting-
sassy.
Like,
posting
why are
subs
you
is
spending
insane,
hours
bro.
not texting me because you want to get back at me? Like
That's
it's just like
sassy
stuff
too.
like that.
Yeah.
Like
No, you were
it's
dating a
so-
woman. So you were
no,
dating a
it
sassy
was
black
so
man. You
mad.
were dating a woman.
And like that, I think I told you this story. There was like the one day where like he went on live with like a bunch of snow bunnies and everything, and I was so sick. Like
What?
I was so sad. Like he was mad because like, or actually like I don't even think like it was so weird. Like I think I had reposted like one of my guy friends on my story, but like he was gay. It wasn't like oh it's like
Yeah.
oh like you know something
I
that's
think
like
we
weird or
talking about
whatever.
that next.
And
Gay
so.
friend.
Okay, you know what? Leave the gay friend alone. Okay, so I reposted him, and I think he had met this friend before, so it's like he knows. And so he like made a whole big thing out of it and everything. And you know, he was supposed to see me, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, I'm not coming to see you." It's like what's going on? Like what? And then I noticed that he went live. I was like, that's kind of weird. I open it, and it's like 10 snow bunnies, and they're not even like wearing clothes. They're just wearing like a bikini top, like all this stuff. I was just like, I was so sick, and I was just like, I
would've been
love
tight.
black men, but like, what is
I
this
would've been tight.
pettiness? Like, I
Nah,
don't
free.
get it.
Thank God that's in your past.
No, I know. That's why I'm just
You're
like
messing
very
with Shannon Sharp.
selective. It was really bad. Never again. Oh my gosh. But no, so when it comes to like intersectionality, like race, gender, like kind of what we were talking about and everything, like, do you think people's like perceptions, like specifically like with black men or like even black women, you could talk about both perspectives. Do you think that they just like naturally assume that like most relationships are just gonna like not really exist? It's just gonna be kind of like a hookup culture situation, or do you think that like they like still have like hope that like they could have like a black relationship?
I feel like the older we get, we'll probably be more relationship centered. I feel like
Yeah.
that's just because we're young and the environment we're in.
That's
encourages-
true.
it
I feel like
encourages hookup
we're
culture.
scared of commitment in
Yeah,
this
I think
environment.
about right now.
Cause it's like
You know, get a little older and they can
Yeah.
it's like how dumb would I look being committed
And then
she out here doing
be like,
whatever.
and then you're looking.
that's how I
But
kind
that
of feel.
gotta
I
go
get
on.
so
That's why
paranoid that I'm gonna
worse.
get cheated
That's why
on.
I've seen it
I
happen.
dabbled.
I've literally
Yes,
seen it
I get
happen.
so scared.
That's
I
my
feel
biggest fear.
In the real world, like outside of school and education, like it's probably more. I would hope so.
Yeah.
It's more serious.
It's more serious.
Yeah. Do you think like also just like other influences like with these like cultural stereotypes like play into like why hookup culture is more prevalent with a lot of like black college students? Like, do you think any of that has to do with anything, or do you think it's just something that's learned?
I think if we look at certain musical artists, and
Yes.
the things that they're saying, and promoting, and
Oh, I
doing,
agree.
Right, I think
One of my
they
favorite artists is
definitely-
A Boogie with a Hoodie.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Literally has a
please.
song named DTB, bro. I'm not.
Yeah, no, he's a
Come
lover
on.
boy.
Yeah,
If I'm not
he
wrong.
is. He is. He
If
is.
we look at others who will not be named, right? But I feel like it's just like pushed in in our
Yeah,
culture.
to not trust each other,
To not
to
trust
like
each other,
only
don't
do
trust-
this, you know.
Da,
Like,
da, 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 don't
Mhm.
trust. Da, 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 oh, have sex, independent black
Yeah.
women. Like have mad bodies. All that. Like, it's just pushed.
No,
It
yeah,
is.
I agree. No, I do agree. Like, if you think about artists like Sexy Red or like other people that like, you're doing too much. Like, her music is fun, but it's like sometimes I'm like, girl, relax. Like, we don't need to be
like-
doing all that, getting all like chlamydia, all that stuff. That's not
Yeah.
cute.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
we gotta like protect ourselves. I do think a lot of artists play into it. And I'm not saying we can't talk about it. I think it is good that we talk about that stuff, but I feel like the way they normalize it, where it's like, why are we talking about getting chlamydia like every other day? Like,
Yeah.
that's a little bit crazy. Like, not gonna lie to you.
I feel like with the body count thing too, like some people feel like that's like cool to have like a really high.
Or when they're like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. I don't want to come anywhere near
Someone
you.
said, "I don't
Like,
remember."
I feel like a lot of black men
Insane.
don't talk about stuff. I don't remember. Or I don't keep count.
Insane.
Like, get away from me. Like, please.
I don't
That's
keep
dirty.
count is a lie.
No, I know they lie. I know
is
they
the
have the
biggest
list
lie.
in their phone. Like, I want to see. Like, let me see the
Nah,
list.
if you need the
Like,
list, you're doing something bad. You're doing something bad work.
you don't like the list?
If you need a list,
If
that's
you need a
bad.
list.
Oh, if you need.
work.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Have you
Okay.
seen lists?
No, like I've. Okay,
you
one.
know it
No, no, no.
exists.
Okay,
I
like
feel like
yes.
having a
yes,
list
I've
is
seen
so
a
like
list.
real objective.
It is
Like,
Yeah, no, you're
why do
like-
you have a
number.
list? Like,
Right,
why
yeah.
do you need a constant reminder?
I feel like we need to take sex more seriously.
Yes.
Sex is
Like,
literally
what
an
happened to
exchange of
intimacy?
energy.
I feel like that's another thing we're gonna get to in the question is like about like there's like lack of intimacy with like a lot of like black sexual relationships, which is like actually terrible. But so I was actually reading this article. It's from Stanford, and they were just interviewing black students on campuses and everything, and so they interviewed black males and black women and everything, and they were just talking about how like one girl specifically was talking about when she was a freshman, she kind of felt pressured in a situation to like have sex and everything, and didn't really want to come off as like, oh, I'm not any fun or anything like that. And she's like, I didn't really want to participate in hookup culture, but it kind of just like happened that way and everything. Like, I don't know if you guys like see that a lot. At least as a black woman, I feel like that is so common, like where they feel so much pressure and they're
I
just
feel
like,
like-
I don't want to do this, but it's like, I just feel like it's sometimes I even hear like people say it's gonna sound really sad, but I feel like it needs to be talked about. I feel like a lot of black women feel like that's the best they're gonna get. Like, they're not gonna get a relationship out of it. So it's like if they want to feel any sort of like romantic closeness, like they're gonna do it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I see what you're saying,
Mhm.
and I also see the other opposite where like they're just saying that's like an excuse.
okay,
Yeah.
you know what?
they want to participate, but they don't want to make it seem like they wanted to participate.
I feel like there's a difference where it's like I don't think there's anything wrong with like women admitting like, okay, maybe I just want to hook up with somebody,
Yeah,
or maybe I
that's fine,
that's
but I
fine,
feel
like
like
no
a lot of- At least
be
problem.
honest about it.
But like, yeah,
Because bro, if like realistically, if you're even in a situation where you're pressured to have sex, like you put yourself in that situation.
wait,
I'm
just-
wait.
No.
No.
Like,
Whoa, whoa,
no,
whoa, whoa.
because no, like I'm.
Whoa.
You okay? You go, but
I
I'm
feel
not.
like
I'm gonna elaborate.
some guys get into like when you guys are one-on-one, like say in a car or like stuff like that, or like in your dorm room. Some guys think that's straight up green light, and it's not.
No,
Yeah.
I
And
get
it's like
irritated
some-
with
some
that.
dudes are
Like,
just like-
why can't we watch a movie?
Yeah. Some guys are like,
Wait,
yo,
wait,
why you
wait.
so
Enough.
far?
Okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about. But you
Excuse
know,
me?
for most men, like if we go, like you're in my dorm room watching a movie, like you're good, you know what that usually means.
Oh no,
No.
I'm sorry,
no,
but like we need
no.
to like keep your hands to yourself. Like, it's just like
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Like-
if you set the intention, like
and
you
like
know what
or
I'm saying,
even
if
like
you
I
get
feel
there
like
and be
this is something that a lot of
you know.
women will do, like and stuff. Like I know some of my black friends will like sit like kind of not far away, but kind of just like enough
Why you so
distance for them,
far?
and then they
So
do
why
like
you
why
over
are you
there?
so
Pull
far?
back
And
through
it's
it. You have to sit on the
yes,
edge of the
you know,
bed.
you see all those TikToks where like, why are you so far away? And it's like I'm not getting close because like I know you're gonna be like what. Or my thing is like, why can't, even if you want to come over or something, can we just kiss? Can we
Yeah.
just make out? Whatever happened to that? Like,
Yeah.
why does it have to like
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like 3, 2, 1, go? Like your clothes are off. Like, because that I
you
feel like
don't
that's a
need
thing
these
that a
anymore.
lot of
It's
people
very
like
final.
talk about. A lot of my black female friends have told me where they've been in a situation where maybe they were in a room and maybe they just wanted like they were fine with like watching a movie, maybe kissing, like that's cool. But then they were like so quick and they're like, why are your clothes off? What's
yeah, no, that's
happening?
not good.
What's
That's-
going
yeah,
on?
that's
And
not
I feel like
good.
that's very normalized and they're just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh well, we were kissing. It's like that doesn't automatically mean 3, 2, 1, go. Like
Yeah.
so.
There's levels to it.
It's there's a lot to it, but
Mhm.
you have to like also like read the other person because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where
Right.
you're, like you were just kissing and now like you have a case.
Yeah.
You know, so you
Exactly.
need to read the other person.
Like,
You need to make sure they're okay with it.
Mhm.
Like get their consent.
like just check in.
Like
Yeah.
literally just ask like, is this okay?
Mhm.
That's fine.
Right.
I feel like also though is like females don't really initiate. like they don't really know how to sometimes.
Oh,
And
okay.
they'll be like afraid
But I feel like
to.
I heard a lot of females don't want to initiate. They want
Yeah,
you to initiate.
exactly.
I feel like
And it's
like a
I-
lot of people like I feel like it's like especially a big thing like within the Black community. I feel like it's like the first time maybe you hang out with someone you want the guy to do it. And I feel like after maybe you know each other for a little bit, it's like okay, you feel comfortable like initiating. Like that's fine. And I feel like I hear that a lot, but it's like, you know, I feel like I don't know. I don't know if this is traditional. I don't know, but it's like I feel like the guy should do it
Should
first.
initiate,
Like
yeah,
like
yeah.
at least the first
No, no.
time you're like whatever.
Okay, you
I
can
don't
say
know.
that you want the guy to initiate,
Right.
but now when he does, why you get mad? If you're not giving any signs either.
Wait, what do you
They're
mean?
not
Do
giving
you,
any signs. Why are you initiating?
No, it's debatable. That's debatable.
No.
What?
But
You on what?
You also
You
no,
Wait.
you also
You don't
just
drive it at
no,
that green
you
light.
also just said if you're
Yeah.
in my room, you know what's gonna happen.
No. All of this
You
is
also
so
just said that.
wrong.
Listen, no, because I see what you're saying. Like we're in college. We're
Like,
young,
like
No.
we kissing.
we're
Correct.
kissing,
Why do I think
on
that's
a
not
bed,
gonna happen though?
Watching
Well,
the
you could
movies.
just say like is like if you're doing that or whatever, like is that all you want to
Like,
do?
what you
Do
trying
you
to
want to
do,
like
yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah,
could say
that's
and I could be like,
fine.
okay, like I don't want to do anything more than that, or okay, I'm okay
Yeah,
with some
that's
stuff. Like
fine.
you can have those conversations because it's like also everyone has different backgrounds. Like someone could have like sexual trauma and you don't want to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
something, and then they're kind of like, oh my god, like what are you doing? Because I've had friends tell me that they've been in situations where like someone did something and they were like, oh, like
Yeah.
that really made me think of this other situation and turn into
Yeah.
something really bad. So just checking in like that, like just making sure, not
Calm
going
little
3, 2,
check-in,
1.
yeah.
Why are your pants off? Like what's going on? Like.
Where your clothes at?
No, and I also think back to like the stereotypes, I think this is something that it was also mentioned in that same article is that a lot of men, you know, are associated with being like hyper aggressive or like very dominant and like within like just hookup culture in general, a lot of times like things can move very quickly and sometimes like based on those stereotypes, this specific person talked about how sometimes it's taught from Black mothers that like they need to be like almost like submissive to like the man, that like sex is more like okay, like the man controls that, if that makes sense, like you know what he wants to do and all that stuff. And I feel like I see that a lot. Like I feel like also with my friends have mentioned situations where they kind of felt like, you know, he's kind of pushing how fast or slow this may go and everything, and maybe they're not fully comfortable with that, but it's so I think normalized within the Black community as well. But I just wanted to hear like your thoughts on that.
I personally like when like a girl can tell me what she wants and like
Mhm.
takes a load off of like me having to lead, because I hate
Mhm.
that. I just don't like it. Like why I gotta make every single decision.
Right.
And then it's like I make a wrong decision. It's like oh damn, like why'd you do that?
Mhm.
It's like
Actually, I like it when they initiate too, but like I have no problem initiating myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like too big of a deal. But I feel like it also gets to a point like if I'm the only one doing it, it's like
yeah, I don't want to do it every
it's
time.
like why? Like you want to be
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think it's just all about like clear communication
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just like being honest and
Yeah, yeah,
everything. But yes, okay. One thing that like I feel like needs to be talked about, and it's so bad within our community, is like a lot of like okay, I'll just like read this little statistic. Okay, so both African American students tend to not demonstrate use of protection compared to their Caucasian counterparts, such as forgoing contraception, such as condoms. And I feel like that is something that is so normalized within specifically Black men, is not wearing and using condoms. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about, because I did not realize this actually until I came to college. I did not think that was a thing. And when I started to have conversations with other people about this, and people were like, what do you mean? Like, oh, like, you know, why would you expect someone to do that? Or like, you know, Black women kind of just being like, oh, I don't care. Like, it's fine. I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, what about whatever happened to STDs, whatever happened to pregnancy, whatever happened to all these concerns? But I just, yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Like, it's
I
so
feel like-
normalized.
I feel like if we go back against what we were talking about, the media that pushes that kind of narrative, like
Mhm.
going raw, like condoms not for me, like I feel
Yep.
like it's just pushed. And a lot of people I talk to, like, yeah, they just raw as like I guess the way to go.
Yeah.
Yes,
Act
they
it's a
just like,
given.
what do you mean? Like, if you bring it up, like, oh, like,
oh, are you
where the
wearing a
condom at?
condom?
They're like, huh?
Huh?
They're like,
What
why
you
would I do
mean?
that? And like,
What are you talking about?
sir, I don't know you. Like, what? Are you kidding me?
That's
Like,
insane.
why are you relying on all these things that, like, you know?
No, you're relying on nothing.
No,
You're relying on
exactly.
God.
No,
You're relying on
literally,
God.
at that point, like,
Yeah.
it's just dangerous. I don't know.
That's so bad.
It makes me
That's so
so
bad.
mad,
That's so
like
bad.
literally,
That's
because
so
it's
bad.
like,
That's so bad.
why? Because also like in the statistic, like you know, I'm not saying that like you know white people don't do that or like you know other races and stuff, but it's so common like
Yeah,
within like
it's
Black people, and of course at college when people are
very-
sexually active, that's even more dangerous because it's like you know.
You don't know where this
you're-
person has been.
Right, you know where they've been, and it's like you're so young to like you know have a kid and all that, so it's like, what is going on? I don't know, but maybe you guys can help me with the ideology
Nah,
of that. I don't
I don't agree with that
know.
ideology.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
even-
I don't know
I
what's
can't
going
help you.
I
on.
No.
can't help you. I cannot.
I feel like it's yeah, it's on both parties. Like
Mhm.
I actually heard like, do you want me to wear a condom? And she's like, I've never had anyone ask me that before.
What?
Yeah, that's very normal. People are like, oh, I never had anyone say that before. My friends have said that. I'm like, oh my
Like,
gosh.
what do you mean? Like,
No.
what are you talking about?
No, that's insane.
No, I remember I
had to
told
give
my
that
mom
whole girl a whole
that.
pep talk. I had to give her a
Yeah.
little like education for
Mhm.
like 30 minutes. I was like, nah, like people ask you, they need to ask you. Like it's 2-party like consent.
Right, correct. Because it's putting you at risk and in
Yeah.
danger. And I feel like, especially my mom even told me this. After I told her this, my mom's white. And like, I remember I told her this for the first time that like, this is so normalized. Like her face, it was like on the floor. She's like, are you serious? She's like, oh my gosh. Like, I just want to like go to like towers and drop off a giant box of condoms and just like leave it there. Cause like, this is ridiculous. Like, how are you doing that? And also my thing is like, how are they not worried? Like as like the black man, like, pregnancy, getting something. Cause it's like, I understand the whole stereotype of like, okay, the deadbeat dad, you can walk away or whatever. But it's like, if you have an STD that you're stuck with for the rest of your life, you can't walk away from that. I'm
Worse than the
sorry,
kid.
but
That's worse than the kid.
right. Oh my gosh. And that's why like I wish there were more people at your Rap Your Soul event because I was just like, they need to sit down. It needs to be like a
Those people
mandatory
sit in
class.
there, yeah.
Sit down
And
because this is reckless.
It'd be the most active people too.
Yes. I'm like, you're not worried of catching something after a
Exactly.
while. Like it's just
It's
like
you don't even know this person.
right,
Like,
exactly. Especially like if you're doing like a one night stand, it's like, ooh, like I don't know, like you're relying on like too much of fate. Like that's just crazy to me. But yeah, no, I do think like, like not that I do think black women, need to also be accountable and be like, okay, like speak up and be like, no, I'm not
No,
doing that
yeah.
unless if you're using protection or I'm on something or whatever and
I
stuff.
know
But I
some
think
men
yeah.
will like start with a condom and then like it just
Get off.
where'd it go?
they're like,
Where
yeah,
to
can
go?
I take
It
it off?
literally, yeah. I hear a lot of that. Like they just take it off and they just won't tell you, and then you're just like, oh, okay, well
well,
that just happened.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's just like the sneaky behavior, like
Yeah.
what is going on. So I feel like there's also just like lack of exposure with even like as we mentioned before with intimacy. I feel like in like what that means. And I feel like it's just like something that's like not showed within our community and everything. But do you think that there's like something that we could do that like might help with that? Or do you think like, it's just not something that's talked about like with like black men, like what intimacy means and also the differences between like sexual intimacy and then just like, emotional intimacy? Because those things are completely different.
So we're talking about like emotional intimacy?
Yeah.
Maybe we could just start like pushing like, like a healthier version of black love more.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe not the hookup culture or like, just showing or promoting things that encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it might be up to our generation to like
I think so too.
to like eventually for our kids show them a good love.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
I don't have a good love like from my parents.
Mhm.
Like I don't have that definition of like what black love's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe we need to do that as a generation going forward and then
Mhm.
like change the perspective for
Mhm.
our kids and for people coming after.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think also just statistically, like black relationships either end up in divorce or just like breakups more than any other race. So I think that already plays a role within
Yeah.
intimacy because it's like if you're not seeing that like with your parents, then it's like how are you going to be able to emulate that with like a partner or something like that? And I feel like a lot of people also in this article was talking about how a lot of like black men like they asked them just like what is intimacy to you, and a lot of them just described like more of like sexual intimacy and not like emotional, like okay, like that's what it means. And I feel like that's just something that is normalized in our culture. It's not really like talked about like the emotional part matters because like you're both human beings like interacting, and you need to make sure that people aren't like in this like vulnerable state because I feel like that just like is lost because like I feel like we talked about, sex has lost its meaning unfortunately.
I feel like just like being alone with somebody, just like laying there, just like talking, like getting in depth is better than any sex you can have.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
Yeah.
really connecting with somebody is so much better.
I feel like that's also another thing that's not normalized is like I feel like I hear so many horror stories of like after people have a sexual experience and
The aftercare.
they just leave. They just leave. Like, what is
Oh
up with
my
black women? They
God.
just leave. They literally just like, they're like, okay, see
Like,
ya.
oh damn, I got something.
Like
to do
I
right
got,
now.
it's like you do not have class at 1 a.m. Like, like it's just so
I have
like,
an assignment
like
due.
why are it's so quick?
Or like, damn, I got an early class. So I gotta
Like, no, you don't. Like, please stop. Like, it's just so
You
like
don't know
it's
I work out
comical
at 5
this
a.m.
point.
every morning? Come on, I gotta
Right.
leave.
Oh my gosh. No,
Be
I
like,
just.
oh bro, they jumping you right now? Damn,
Right.
where you at?
Yo, call me, pretend like this is an emergency.
Like-
Yo, that's.
I'm definitely.
No,
Oh my
niggas are sick.
gosh.
Niggas are sick.
No, I
Niggas are
just.
sick.
It's just. I feel like it's something that we need to talk about more because it's like, why are you up and leaving? Like, just it's okay to
I feel like aftercare gives more of like it's that commitment that we're scared of.
that's
'Cause,
not
like, if
commitment.
you're
I'm
no,
sorry,
Yes,
but like,
it is.
no.
Yes, it
It's
is. If you're laying there with
If
somebody
you're
after,
okay, it'd be different when you're like laying there telling them like I love you and like like that's just like so
Nah,
like you're
that's
doing
commitment.
too
You know, there's
much.
chemicals in the brain like that release.
Okay,
after
but
you
that's
have
like you're
sex.
already
Yes,
doing,
that
And
but like
now you
sex
have to
is
think
already
about it.
intimate.
Your
So
skin-
it's like
your
if you're
skin is
scared,
skin.
but
don't
the
do it.
chemicals release after
Exactly,
you have sex,
and you're
after
like-
you orgasm.
you're
I
tired.
know.
You're
Yeah,
sitting there
you're laying
skin
there.
to skin.
That's really where the term
and it's
pillow
like
talk comes from.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like the worst
Yeah.
thing is like now that you have tattoos, right?
Yeah.
I had a girl trace my tattoos after.
Oh,
We're
my
laying there tracing
God.
my chest tattoo. No,
Yeah, 'cause,
no,
yeah.
never talk to her ever again. Not gonna lie.
Okay,
Like-
that's so
Like-
mean. That is so mean. Oh my
saying.
gosh.
No, bro.
I'm
No,
even
and 'cause
ready.
it's
Okay,
like,
but like, did you
damn, like,
wait? Hold on.
She might
Did you-
love me. Like,
Did you talk to her before about that it was only going to be like a temporary thing?
Yeah.
She know that?
Yes.
So why
Are
are
you
you
sure?
chasing your tattoos?
Exactly. Why
Exactly.
you
All right, you know what?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, some people's love language is physical touch.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
you know
I
what?
understand, but like, why are you showing your love language to me?
You
At
can share
that
your love
at
language
that
with
point,
like
though?
anyone, like your friends.
no,
I'm
like
saying
your...
that's a
no,
very
no, no.
critical
That's a
moment. Right
very
after,
love
very
language.
critical.
Okay, so what? You're just gonna up and leave? You're just gonna be like,
No,
oh,
no,
look
no,
at the
no,
time.
no, no,
Like
but,
what?
like-
You're gonna what? You're gonna get like all distant. You're gonna like sit across the bed. Like what? I
No.
just.
Be
But it's like,
move,
there's
like, bro, go ahead, like move. No, man.
Oh no, that's
there's
just
a little bit too much. Like, there's a point you
Yeah,
don't
there's a
cross.
point.
There's a point. There's a line.
a line. Well, who gets to decide the line? Because it's like she might think that's okay. You know?
I think it's
she
not.
just-
Did you tell her like? No.
Yeah, I told her that was crazy. I did tell her that was crazy.
That's
And
so
then you
mean.
never
I
talked
think
to her
I would
again?
cry. Like I think I actually cry as somebody because it's like
Why you say?
like I'm sorry, but like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
too much. That's like
So
you need to
funny.
calm down. I'm
That's
sorry.
funny.
Like that's just like you're. Listen, you're already doing something intimate with
No, 'cause
somebody,
you're like-
so it's
No,
like
mind
You're
you,
pill-
they
you're
just
sitting here
committed the
pillow
most
talking
intimate
me.
act two
That's-
beings could ever commit on the face of this earth.
Yeah.
But the problem comes when she starts tracing the tattoo on his chest.
And like now you're pillow talking me, and then, like it isn't like damn. It's like
That's what I mean. Like you'll really do that with someone, and then you'll like pass them like you never even spoke to them in your life. Like you didn't just see this person in the most
gosh.
vulnerable state you could ever see them in life. That's what I mean. Like sex is so final. Like, it's just-
I don't know. I feel like you just gotta be like careful about like who you're doing it with, because
Oh,
not
yeah.
that you're gonna know that stuff sometimes, like beforehand. But like I feel like if they already feel like they're getting emotionally attached, it's like you should have a
And that's their
conversation.
fault. Like,
That's their fault.
Yeah,
that's
that's
crazy. That's
their fault.
crazy.
Like I
Why
said,
is it?
but
Why
I'm
are we
always-
blaming the
No,
woman?
but I'm always of the
we
philosophy.
were just blaming the man.
Yeah,
like 10
okay,
minutes
Okay,
ago.
because the man needs
Let's
to take
not- let's not- let's
responsibility.
not.
always
let's
of the
not.
philosophy of don't do like if you as long as you're not selling dreams, then you're not
Yeah.
responsible.
That's
for
selling a
anything.
dream. Not gonna lie
No,
to
it's
you.
not. How's that selling a
It's
dream?
not selling a
I
dream.
just feel like you're already doing something like sex is intimate, like it is.
It's very
like
intimate.
it, right?
Yeah, but we
like
talk about
you're,
that.
you're
It
naked,
lost
like
it,
so. It's
though.
like
It's watered down now though.
Yeah, it is. We just agreed.
that
it was
doesn't
watered
mean it
down.
should be
It
watered
shouldn't be,
down.
it shouldn't be,
like,
but it
agreed
is.
on that.
but
it
then
is
like
watered
it's like
down.
if you're like participating, isn't that making the problem worse?
It is making the problem worse.
Are you gonna ask a whole bunch of college students to be abstinent?
No, I'm not
Exactly.
saying that. I'm saying just have open and honest
So-
communication.
So we have to assume that they're already gonna do it. The only thing we can control is what they're telling them.
yeah,
And
I
the
just feel
context
like
around it. So if you tell them like, yeah, after we do this, we're gonna get in a relationship, we're gonna be married, like. But if you're not selling a dream, you're just like, yeah, I'm just trying to crack, like.
Yeah.
yeah, just say that up front, so you know,
Exactly.
like all right, time for you to go. Like, yeah, that's another thing too. Like they just like they don't ever like. I just feel like there's a big thing where it's like they're not staying the night or like they're just like
No,
leaving. Like you know.
Easiest thing is, oh, my roommate's coming back.
Oh, that's crazy.
I wouldn't not.
Roommate's coming back.
Not the roommate. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But no, I know like we like discussed a little bit just about how like a lot of times like like women were talking about how like they maybe are looking for something that's like more dating relationships, and even whenever they maybe want to have sex, they're looking for some sort of like kind of like emotional and physical intimacy and everything. Do you think that it's just more of like a miscommunication between like black men and black women, or do you think it's like a big conversation overall that like we need to have of like, okay, if we're gonna be in this like I don't know like sexual situation, like we need to kind of know like how both of us are feeling in the situation.
I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had,
Mm-hmm.
but like, we're kind of just like, oh, we should know. They don't want
Mhm.
to talk about it. Like, it should like feel it out.
I mean, I feel like we've had conversations about it already, like what what everyone wants from the other person.
Yeah.
I feel like people kind of say one thing and do another.
100%.
I agree. Yeah, they say like, oh, like, or even if I feel like I see a lot of women that are like, oh, you're just using me for my body, and then they're just kind of like, no, I'm not. It's not like that.
then
But
they're
then
like-
like
but then they're
every
also using the man
situation
for
is
their
like
But you do the
that.
same
It's
They're
thing.
also
so
using
it's
the
like-
man for their body.
what? When?
What?
I never
What do you mean
like,
when?
like I just feel like that's.
It is definitely happening.
So you don't think women use men for their bodies?
I feel like a very selective population does. I don't think overall that's
I
like
think women use
really.
men for their bodies. It's the
How?
same.
It's the same.
How?
It's the same. Like they both
Yeah.
know what they're there for.
I don't think so.
I think so.
It's definitely the
I
same.
need an example. I feel like this is just like
Okay,
We're
like
here
maybe
for the
she's
same
faking, like
thing.
she's like, oh, I want to like be more with you, but like she keeps having sex with you.
oh,
what
like
I'm
the
saying?
kind of back and forth. Like
Yeah,
okay,
then
I get what
afterwards,
you
like,
mean.
Oh, why are we
Like
in a relationship, but it's
Mhm.
like you keep coming back and doing this and that.
yeah,
So it's like, do you really want that? Your actions aren't matching your words.
right.
It's getting sticky. Like, good.
No, I think there's a lot of like that was actually my next question is like the mixed messaging. I think because it's like if you keep going back to that person, I feel like that's also common like within like a lot of either black relationships or black sexual relationships. It's like oh even if like the woman is saying like I don't want to continue this anymore, and then they keep going
They
back.
keep
But
going back.
but like I think it goes back to what I said before is that they feel like that's the best they're
Oh,
gonna
that's the best
get.
they're
Like
gonna
they
get from this
legitimately,
person?
I feel like we're all being brainwashed. I think I feel like
Yeah.
I've kind of tried to step away from that and be like like I feel like it's not good to have that mentality that like oh like you're just like a physical object to somebody because that's not okay. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
just feel
not
like you got to get out of that, and I feel like it's hard for people because it's like if they're not being modeled even from their families that there is different, or maybe they see like their father treating their mother terribly or something, or like in a way of like she's an object, then of course they're gonna like view it that way. They're gonna think like, well, even though I hate it that like he only calls me to have sex, but that's the closest thing I'm gonna have to a relationship.
So it's better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I
I
feel like
feel
it's all or
yeah, I
nothing.
can see
right?
that.
It's also that like we're scared to change.
Yeah.
As people, we are scared to change. I feel like if you're comfortable in a situation, you're not gonna want to change that.
No, I agree.
Agreed.
I think it's something we just need to have open dialogue about, or it's gonna keep getting worse.
Yeah.
But yeah. So my last question is there anything else that you wanted to say or like bring light to like this conversation, whether it has to do with like sex education or any just problems like within our community or anything else? Any like suggestions, solutions, anything like that?
I feel like we touched on it all.
We touched on a lot. I feel like if you're gonna take anything away from this conversation, just don't sell dreams. Be open and honest with, with what you
Communication.
want.
No more lying.
Protection.
Right.
Because you never know. Maybe they want the same thing too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are we lying for?
Mm-hmm.
Just be open and honest. Like, yeah, don't want to get in a relationship right now. If they keep messing with you, that's on them. That's
Oh
their
yeah.
fault.
100%.
So, anything from you, Dion?
No.
Biggest takeaway?
Biggest takeaway, definitely just communication and protection.
Yeah.
Biggest two
Communication
things.
and protection. And yeah, wrap that tool.
Yes.
Don't be a fool.
Wrap
your
that soul.
tool.
Yes. All right. Thanks for listening to the 5th episode of Navigating the Ivory Tower. Once again, I'm your host, Jade Davis, and we had special guests, Matt and Dion. This episode was produced by Tyler Stanley and edited by Amanda Bobish. Tune in next time to hear more about what it's like to be at a PWI.